Next, from Springfield, we talked to Alex Brill, the CEO of Matrix Global Advisors, about why he's advocating for states to remove their restriction on access to pseudoephedrine, which currently requires a doctor's prescription. Pseudoephedrine, a drug found in common cold medicines, is no longer available over the counter in Illinois, as it is also a vital component for methamphetamine production. This runs about 7 minutes.
Alex Brill, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. You are a consultant and you're going around talking to media outlets about the availability of pseudomethamphetamine and how you would like to see the way it's handled by various states change. What message are you trying to get out?
Pseudophederine is a product available behind the counter at a pharmacy, and it's the active ingredient in cold medicine that treats the symptoms of colds and allergies. About 18 million households around the country use this product on an annual basis to treat those allergies that they suffer from. They're limited in most states, including the state of Illinois, for the amount that they can purchase. They're limited to about a month's supply at a time. You cannot go into a pharmacy and buy a shopping cart full of pseudophederine products. That's the result of state laws and a system called NPLEX, which keeps track of how much every individual purchases of a product like this. The concern, and one of the issues that I'm talking about today, is some states have gone much further in their restrictions of pseudoephedrine products, and by requiring a prescription in order to obtain that product. And that's a huge burden on the millions of law-abiding allergy sufferers who would be forced to take time off from work, make an appointment, wait in the waiting room, go to the doctor, make a copay, and then finally get to the pharmacy to get their product.
Just so people know, the reason that they limit pseudomethamphetamine is it's an ingredient in the making of methamphetamine, and so that was one of the ways that law enforcement thought they could both limit the availability, plus they could maybe track who's making meth by them going around and buying it. Now, my understanding in Illinois is that you tell me if I'm wrong, you don't need a prescription, but it's behind the counter. You have to ask for it, and I guess sign off to say, I'm Joe Blow and I took some. Is that how it's prevalent?
That's exactly right. No prescription is required here in Illinois, but the NPLEX system is in effect, and you do need to show your ID, your driver's license or state ID, in order to be able to get some. And you're also right, the purpose of these restrictions is to prevent the production or limit the production of meth. And these programs, this NPLEX system, has been very effective by limiting the quantity that any single individual can purchase. What we've seen as states have adopted these programs is a decline in the number of meth labs that law enforcement can find and treat in a given state.
So how many states, so I guess the one question would be, are you asking for any change within Illinois, or are you fine with it being available upon request?
I think the system here in Illinois works well. Some people may complain that it's a bit of an inconvenience or an intrusion to have to show their identification every time they just want to buy cold medicine, but I think that it's an appropriate limit and restriction because of the seriousness of the meth abuse problem, particularly in a number of counties in the southern part of the state. And so these restrictions help reduce the amount of homegrown meth. But one of the key issues to keep in mind is that increasingly meth is not homegrown. In fact, it comes across the border from Mexico. And Mexican drug cartels are getting into the business of meth production in a big way.
Which is a related issue, although somewhat of a different issue, I suppose. As I understand it, now you did a study, right? And you had two recommendations. One is seal off the border. I may be paraphrasing it wrong, but basically stop the importation of illegal meth. And the other one, recommendation at the moment escapes me, but help me.
So I think about this in sort of simple economic terms of demand and supply. So the supply is increasingly coming from Mexico, and we need to address that problem at its source, whether it be at the border or the transport of Mexican meth across state lines into local communities. The second one is on the demand side, and I think we need to recognize the seriousness of the meth abuse problem, and we need to think, and here the solutions are much more difficult, but we need to think about proper treatment and intervention and education to try to reduce the demand and addiction to meth.
Although we've had a war on drugs for 50 years now, so I don't know how effective we're going to be on either of those issues. Has there been, is your study to, on one hand, identify and say to all those states that have not yet gone to a prescription only, don't do it for the reasons you already said? And by the way, if we buy some tablets with pseudomethamphetamine in it, it might be, I don't know what the cost might be, but it's minimal, right? I mean, it might be $8, $10. Right. Whereas if someone has to go to a doctor just to get a prescription, they're going to have to pay a copay just for the doctor visit of anywhere from $20 to $50.
Absolutely, right. So if a policy, an RX only, a prescription only policy were to go into effect, a lot of allergy sufferers would simply not get the access to the drugs that help them the way they want to. But a lot of people would go through the additional burdens and steps, the hurdles, and exactly as you described, make a copay at their doctor's visit that's much greater than the cost of the over-the-counter product. Not to mention that their insurance company and their insurance premiums are making an additional payment to that physician as well. And so those costs, on a nationwide basis, if we went nationwide with this RX-only policy, be about $40 million out of pocket for allergy sufferers and over $130 million for the whole system.
And just so people recognize the names, what are some of the over-the-counter brands that we would buy that people would know?
Yeah, Sudafed, Claritin D, products like that.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.